Very good morning. This presentation is brought to you by Resonate International with a mission to leverage knowledge worldwide. The topic being covered is global violence and crimes against women. Need to break the cycle and to state that you are not alone. In a world that prides itself on progress, the grim reality of violence and crimes against women remains a blight on our collective consciousness. Despite global advancements in education, legal frameworks, and social awareness, the prevalence of gender-based violence persists, affecting millions of women and girls. The question arises, why can't this situation be corrected? Are there mechanisms, possibilities, or insights that leaders, law enforcement, the justice system, media, and society can employ to address this menace more effectively? The scale of violence against women is staggering. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 1 in 3 women globally experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. In some regions, this figure is even higher, with studies showing that up to 70% of women in certain countries face gender-based violence. The United Nations report also suggests that around 87,000 women were intentionally killed in 2021, with more than half by own intimate partners or family members. Looking at all this, isolated initiatives are many in the world. Let's look at few. 1. Coordinated community response as programmed in Minnesota. This model brings together law enforcement, social services, and the justice system to address domestic violence and violence against women comprehensively. By ensuring that all parts of the system work together, the CCR model has been significant success in reducing recidivism rates, improving victim support, and this approach can be adopted globally, ensuring a unified and effective response to violence against women. Second example is emergency protective measures in Spain. Spain's introduction of gender violence courts and rapid response protective measures have proven effective in swiftly dealing with the cases of violence. With specialized judges and streamlined processes, this initiative ensures that cases are heard quickly and restraining orders or protective measures are granted within 72 hours of a complaint. Other countries can learn from this model by adopting fast-track judicial mechanisms specifically for gender-based violence. Brazil's Maria da Penha law, named after a survivor who became a national symbol. This law transformed Brazil's approach to domestic violence. It criminalizes domestic violence, mandates protective measures, and provides shelters for victims. Since its implementation, Brazil has seen a 10% reduction in domestic violence-related homicides, a model other nations can emulate by passing comprehensive legislation coupled with robust enforcement. Fourth is education and economic empowerment, as seen in Rwanda. Post the genocide time, Rwanda has seen a focus on women's education and economic empowerment, recognizing that financial independence can reduce vulnerability to violence. Programs that combine vocational training with gender equality education, like Rwanda's one-stop centers, offer both immediate care, long-term support, and show the power of economic empowerment as a tool to combat violence. Fifth is various apps and platforms specially created for women to enable them find safe routes in cities by using crowdsourced data. Similarly, such platforms allow women to document and share instances of harassment also in real time. These technological innovations can be scaled up and adapted to local contexts, providing women with practical tools to navigate their safety and security will become far more easier. While these successful models provide valuable lessons, the absence of a global framework and a common code for nations addressing violence against women leaves a critical gap. Currently, there is no comprehensive international agreement that mandates uniform standards or obligations for nations to combat gender-based violence. This is where the United Nations must step in. UN General Assembly Resolution 64 by 289, which established UN Women, its frontal organization with a mission and a goal to prioritize women's equality, including crimes and violence against them, and to unlock progress across the board on this issue, can and must play a lead role in this direction. With the mandate available and worldwide presence and eyes and ears to the ground reality, this UN mandated organization will be in the best possible position to bring everyone together on this extremely sensitive and high stakes matter. A UN mandated global framework, as suggested on violence against women, would establish a common code of conduct for all nations, creating legally binding commitments to prevent, protect, and prosecute gender-based violence. Such a framework could set minimum standards for laws, law enforcement, and victim support services, while promoting cross-border cooperation in tackling trafficking, online abuse, and other transnational crimes against women. This global framework would ensure that every nation, regardless of its culture or political differences, is held to the same standard of accountability. A UN-led international treaty could be an essential step towards global solidarity in ending violence against women. By signing this treaty, the governments would commit to regular reporting, international monitoring, and cooperation in bringing perpetrators to justice. While this is the top priority to do, meanwhile, other mechanisms for change must be activated quickly. For example, implementation of fast-track courts. Building on Spain's model, countries should implement gender violence courts that fast-track cases and ensure swift justice. Second, mandatory training for law enforcement. Training programs similar to those in Argentina's gender violence unit must be mandatory for all law enforcement personnel, focusing on sensitivity, victim support, and legal procedures. And this is especially important for developing countries and their environments and their cultures. Community-based intervention. Expanding the coordinated community response CCR model can enhance local accountability. Communities need to be empowered to intervene, support victims, and deter potential perpetrators. Fourth could be promote economic empowerment. The governments should invest in education and vocational training programs targeting women similar to Rwanda's approach. Economic empowerment is a long-term solution that reduces dependency and vulnerability to abuse. And lastly, leverage technology for safety. Encourage the development and widespread use of safety apps and platforms that can help women document and report harassment and violence. Conclusion: a resounding call to action and reassurance. The fight against violence and crimes against women is not a distant battle. It's a personal one for every society, every community, and every individual. This is not just about protecting women. It's about transforming the very fabric of our societies, the way we think and the way we act. We must move beyond empty rhetoric and into the realm of action. There has to be a collective call to action to hold perpetrators accountable, to dismantle the norms that enable violence, and to ensure that no woman ever feels unsafe in her home, in her workplace, or in her community. Together, we have to build a social environment, starting with our local communities, societies, villages, cities, nations, and then globally, where women can live without fear, where justice is swift, and where society rises in union. The women of the world must hear a loud and a clear message from everyone now that you are not alone and your voices are being heard. Change will happen. The coordinated efforts of all and potentially a global framework soon as suggested should pave the way for a future where women's safety is prioritized and their dignity is upheld. Good luck, best wishes, and God bless.